Session and collaboration one track for today. Power up your Microsoft Teams meetings, live events, and webinars. Fortunate to have Ryan and Galen here to be able to talk about a subject that's very near and dear to me, as I was kind of mentioning beforehand. My role, so you know who I am. Some of you guys are new to this session. Don Donay. I am part of the organization committee for MN365. I also work at Microsoft, and my role, I talk about this stuff a lot and love this subject. So I'm hoping I'm going to get a couple more things out of this from these guys, so we'll see. But as you've been seeing throughout the course of the day, these are all being recorded. Make sure you're on mute throughout the course of the session. Also, make sure that you don't have your camera turned on. Also, if you have questions, please raise the hand inside Teams. We'll call on you, or please throw it in the chat. But we do like to listen to you. We like to have a conversation with you, so please do that. If you need to turn on live captioning, you can do that in the More menu and be able to turn that on. Please be interactive. We will, if you are interactive, we may actually will reward you with a $25 gift card. Otherwise, we're always going to pick one person out of the session. And then don't forget to take care of the survey at the end. You're going to get an opportunity to win that Surface Go. Please, we can't do anything without our sponsors. So RBA, Concurrency, Sky North, and Cyber Advisors for this particular event we're doing today. So if you need any information about any of those, please reach out. We'll make sure we get you in contact with them. And then, of course, the survey, I'll get that out. But somebody's going to get a laptop Go. So soon, we'll see how that goes. All right. With that, let me turn it over to Galen and Ryan. I'm going to actually let you guys so give me a second. And all right, guys, it's all yours. Let's talk about Teams meetings, live events, and webinars.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you, Don. We are bringing up the presentation. Here we go. All right, so welcome everybody. We are happy to be joining Workshop Day today, and thank you for the introduction, Don. We are looking forward to the next 90 minutes with you guys and talking about how you can power up your team's meetings, webinars, and live events. Ryan and I speak often about this. This is a passion of ours. And a little bit more about us. My name is Galen Keene. I am an architect and partner of Emperor Media Group. We focus on events of all types, webinars, live events, meetings, both corporate meetings as well as community meetings and events. I also work in the community as well as the president of the San Diego Microsoft 365 Productivity Group. We meet often, and so if you'd like to join any of our meetings, please feel free to visit our meetup group. Of course, I'm available on socials as well. You can reach me on Twitter and LinkedIn using those hashtags.
Sweet. Hello, I'm Ryan Schouten. Been involved in the community. Not my first experience with the Minnesota Microsoft 365 Fridays. Did a few sessions actually on stream a couple years ago. So happy to be back here again with Galen. Yeah, we're partners at Emperor Media Group, and this is what we do. We focus on helping companies be more successful with their live events and be involved. So it's going throughout this. I'm also currently at Zillow, at least for the next week, and then I'm going independent to do my own thing to be able to focus more on the stuff I enjoy doing. So definitely happy to be here. I've been involved with the Microsoft ecosystem for quite a while.
All right, so as we talk about live events and how to power them up, we want to first begin by talking about everything that Teams offers out of the box. There's a tremendous amount of functionality that you can leverage, both things that are available now and things that will be available in the very near future. So to provide a foundation for our conversation, we want to talk about what's available there, and then start to talk about how you can extend those capabilities further by leveraging OBS, open source software, no cost to you, and software that we use frequently. So we'll talk about what OBS is, and then go into a deeper dive around OBS by providing demos with some key concepts and capabilities that OBS offers that can quickly power up your meetings, webinars, and live events. Then we'll look to conclude with some pro tips that we've learned throughout our experiences the last many years producing hundreds, if not thousands, of events of various sizes. And of course, there's Q&A at the end here. But as Don was saying, please feel free to leverage chat, raise your hand. We hope that this is an engaging and exciting session for you guys. And the more you can contribute, the more success it'll be for everyone. All right. So we're going to go ahead and dive on in. Like I said, let's go ahead and talk about new features in Teams that are available to you now.
Yeah, and one of the things we've kind of gone through as Galen and I are preparing this, a lot of these features we're talking about are things that you can either take advantage of now or in the near future. So we kind of tried to limit it within things that, at least by Microsoft estimates, we're going to be released within the next 6 months or so. So that way it's something that you could take advantage of and be able to get some wow factor fairly soon instead of waiting, oh yeah, it'll be out next year sometime.
All right.
All right, so the first one here, kind of a cool piece of functionality. If you know what it is, you'll notice we're doing it now for this presentation. And it's the present in Teams option within PowerPoint. What this allows you to be able to do is your presentation mode, just like if you're doing a presentation, you just, okay, hit start presentation, everything comes up. You get the same functionality, but now instead of just showing on another screen, it actually sends that content out to PowerPoint, to Teams. With that, this is a really cool way of being able to share your slides because it's a lot less resource intensive, as in bandwidth and everything else, than if you're trying just to share a desktop. Because if you share a desktop, you have to update every single pixel, and you say send everything over, even if nothing's really changing. So for like right now, we have the little animated image in the background there going every single time. Okay, all those pixels, the entire thing has to reload. Whereas with Present in Teams, it just shows and then it just loads on your end. Also, the cool part about that is you don't have to worry about the audio. How many times have we been in a meeting and somebody says, okay, I'm going to play a video, and it's part of their slides, and then everybody's like, yeah, can't hear anything. So when you're doing a present in Teams, it automatically handles making sure that the audio plays through. So that way you don't have to hit the button. You just say, hey, play, and it just goes. It makes things a whole lot easier to be able to do a presentation. As you can see through the animated image here, you also get your slide view, you get your notes. That way you can still progress and carry on, but yet it's all just connected directly in with Teams.
Speaking of notes, everyone, what's important to take away as we walk through each of these features is that when you do see our slide deck, know that our notes include all of the feature IDs that map these features to Microsoft's roadmap. So that will be in the notes section. And Ryan's right. As I look at this, obviously I get my Teams window in front of me, and I can use the laser pointers, all of the great features that PowerPoint provides, while staying engaged with my camera and my screen in front of me. So on to the next one, which is breakout room changes. And I hope that everyone here is using breakout rooms. This is very commonly used in a lot of the work that we do, providing or helping our clients with larger meetings where we're breaking out into groups to go talk about specific topics relevant to a larger team, bringing people back. These breakout room changes that have come towards the end of last year and are now out and coming out in DoD and GCC environments allow you to create these rooms, excuse me, and assign managers to those rooms, right? So those managers or presenters can run those rooms on your behalf, and you can distribute the workload of getting people in and managing the presentations within those rooms. So it's a great feature that has really made it something that can be used in education and other environments.
Yeah, and I think this feature is definitely one of those ones that came from, honestly, from a lot of competition from some of the other tools out there that say, hey, in the education space, they need this. Because like if you're with the whole COVID situation, everybody had to go from schools from in person now to online, and the ability to be able to say, hey, well, we want you guys to focus in breakup groups and then come back and report back in. When we first started the whole pandemic, teams didn't have that functionality. So it took them a little while. So now it's nice to see that feature is still getting focused, still getting feature changes and improvements to simplify it and make it a much better and smoother process for all involved.
Yeah. And it's very pleasant to see that this year DoD and GCC environments are receiving this feature as well. So I know that I have some clients in the government space, and so this is a much sought after feature that we're now able to leverage. All right, marching forward.
So yeah, restart live event. This is one of those ones that's near and dear to both my heart and to Galen. 2 years ago, right at the early in COVID, we put on an event. It was called the Microsoft 365 Virtual Marathon. We did everything in live events. So it had its little learning curves, it had its issues, but for the most part, it worked. One of the biggest problems we ran into was the fact that if you're a producer in a live event, there is a nice big red button that is end live event. And I kid you not, it happens so many times across our event where we have a producer thinking they were hitting the big red button, leave button, but they're actually hit end live event. And when they're done, at the time, end live event was permanent. You could not recover from it. So as soon as somebody hit end, that room's dead. You had to scramble to reschedule everything, get back up, get all the links updated. It was just a nightmare. It happened so many times. So now, and even myself, as I was going through the event, there's time frames I had to catch myself because, like I said, we've been trained visually to leave a meeting. It's the big red button on the top. So at the time, even in Teams, the leave button in a live event was not red. It was more just a regular button. And then the end was red. So I've caught myself a few times like, okay, time to leave, and just out of habit going towards the red. I'm like, no, let's go. I gotta go back up and hit leave instead of end. So now what you can do is that if somebody happens to do that, they can hit the end live event button. And then with that, and now you have the option to restart it. So that way your link, your room, everything is still good. People may have to rejoin, but at least it's not okay, we've got to completely start all over, set up a whole new live event and just deal with all those headaches. So it's one of those ones, that one's definitely out there. Demoed it for a presentation I was doing in December. So I know it's there and it works and it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, something about big red buttons that that makes people want to press them.
And we're not saying, and so right now, do not push that big red button because then you won't be able to see us anymore. So please wait till later.
Right. Yeah, that's huge. The next one hasn't come out yet, but we are eager to see this one come out. The virtual green room. So it's exactly like what it sounds for those of you that think about, the green room on a movie set, or, in talk shows, things like that. It is exactly like that. It's a place where organizers and presenters can meet. We can, socialize, go through, mini tech checks to make sure that, our mics are working, our video is working, and chat back and forth. You can also, what's really neat about this is that there's a way to share content before the event starts. So, if you don't have somebody like Dawn to kind of MC the event and make sure, that people understand where they are. This allows you to throw up some type of screen, right, that welcomes people to your event. And when they come in, they see that screen. Oh, I'm here for Ryan and Galen's talk on powering up live events, meetings, and webinars. They know they're in the right space. It also provides to your attendees a chat kind of Q&A feature, and they can begin to ask questions via that chat feature, and you can engage with them from the green room. So there's a lot of capability there for you to kind of make sure that all of your presenters have their mics and their hardware dialed in while still engaging with your attendees and ensuring that they know that they're in the right place. So it's a very cool feature. Really looking forward for this one to drop.
Yeah, one of the things, there's a concept that Galen and I kind of came up that we affectionately call the double teams, which kind of gets this functionality, and we actually have time to demo that, as at least the basic set of that as part of the presentation today. So kind of fun, excited to deal with that. But yeah, and it also kind of plays into the next one here a little bit. But it's definitely some really nice stuff to be able to get ready, because a lot of times, especially in a Teams meeting, there is no, hey, I'm going to prep and hey, we'll get things ready beforehand. It's as soon as everybody joins, everybody's visible, everything's good to go, unless you set up a whole lobby, but then that gets a little tricky to manage. So,
Hey guys, so Naomi was asking a question, is the green room like a breakout room, and do you leave the green room to go on stage? And I think we can make some thoughts about what it's going to be like, but the first part of it I want to say is it's not like a breakout room at all. It's a pre-stage, hey, the meeting is going to go into pre-live type scenario where attendees coming in will see one thing, presenters and organizers will probably see completely different, right? And be able to talk, chat, do what they need to do ahead of time. And I think that button you see start meeting is that let's move it to live, kind of like what we used to do in live events, right? That type of an idea.
Yeah, and as well, like as I think this one and the next feature we're going to talk about are things that Microsoft has announced and talked about at Ignite, for example, but we don't have a whole lot of details yet. So
exactly,
like I said, and as knowing what we know of Microsoft, my guess is the option to have the green room is going to be that. It is going to be an option. So it's not going to be on by default for every single meeting, but it's one of those things you can turn on. Carrie, to your question, is there going to be a feature for all three meeting types? I'd say probably not all three. I would, we don't have anything definitive yet, but I would say it's probably going to be for Teams meetings and webinars, because live events already have it. They already have their ability to do their pre-live state. We just don't have that as part of regular Teams meetings and webinars yet.
And that's an important note. I think it's good. That's a great question, because it will help us as we talk today to understand how far we can go into explaining live events to a little more detail. Especially if you haven't used live events before, we'll make sure to include that in the conversation.
We do have a question. Virtual green rooms, green screen, like a separate scene OBS, like a countdown screen. Try not to steal OBS thunder here. So there's a little bit from what we've seen demoed from Microsoft. It's just mostly going to be, there's the two experiences. There's the attendee experience where you'll have some sort of branding that we can apply, maybe a logo, maybe some sort of text saying, hey, this is starting soon. And then there's the experience like we have in the screenshot here, which is, okay, the presenters and organizer in there ready, getting things ready. So yeah, there are ways we can kind of deal with that similar scenario within OBS. But in this situation, being natively built into the tool makes it really nice. That way you don't have to do extra stuff to get it. And that's the whole point of the new features, is things that you can take advantage of without all the extra stuff. Because a lot of these things we could take advantage of. We can still, like breakout rooms, they worked. We could have used them. These are things to make it easier, like a PowerPoint presenting Teams. It's things that makes our lives a lot easier and makes it a lot more seamless of an experience.
Yeah. And I think importantly, the role that you play in your organization, if may be one where you're kind of the point of contact or the primary person that's able to level up meetings, webinars, and live events within your organization. And if that's true, then you may be spread out thin in some cases where you need to only provide some enhanced capabilities like a green room. And Ryan and I, like I said, we have a solution for that that definitely makes use of OBS. So you can do that now, and we'll talk about how you can do that. But in the near future, if that's one of the only reasons why you would use OBS, you'll be able to leverage Teams out of the box for that capability. So kind of piggybacking on this green room feature, there's another feature upcoming.
Yes, there is. So for this particular one, like I said, is along those same lines. But this one kind of gets a lot more towards, if you're thinking like in a webinar or a news webcast, for example, you have a couple different people. You have your main news anchor sitting at the desk, but now all of a sudden you want to bring in somebody else to talk about the weather, to talk about sports, or in the business parlance, you have your main MC, and then you have your CFO can now come on screen, do their whole thing about the financial health of the organization. They talk about all those things, and then they can move away. So that way, it's not just okay, I've got a member have them turn on their camera. I can say, hey, you know what? Just keep your camera on. I'm going to bring you in when it's time. As we can see on here, we're exactly going to bring them on screen, and now we have both people. So that way we can control. Okay, your turn. Come on. Yep, you're good to go. Okay, now I'm removing you. So it gives you, as a producer of an event or a meeting or a webinar, it gives you the ability to control, hey, I want to control when people come on and when people go off. Granted, if you're talking like a regular Teams meeting, is there a lot of value in this? Probably not. Because in a regular Teams meeting, everybody's going to be talking. But in a lot of cases, like even now, we're using a Teams meeting to be able to do the event, because Teams meetings have a lot of the features. It gets us the interaction. But the ability to say, hey, I want to now control on and off, makes it really nice to be able to have that flexibility and not have to rely on, hey, Don, your camera's off. Can you turn on your camera and get ready to go? It's already ready to go. We can flag it and say, okay, you're up on screen.
Awesome. All right. Moving forward, the co-organizer capability. This is a really cool one, right? Whoever organizes things on behalf of others, and then may need to take a day off or something comes up while the event is supposed to occur, is really going to appreciate this one. There is a co-organizer capability, and this you'll be able to share the control of an event when you set up the invitation to the event. And your co-organizers, will have almost all of the same capabilities of the organizer, including management of meeting options. So if before the meeting you need to change some options, things like that, you'll be able to do that as a co-organizer. So again, you can set up these events, you can send out the invitations and mark who your co-organizers are. And this is extremely helpful. We run events where, like today's, where there's many, rooms, virtual rooms, if you will, that are running simultaneously. And it's advantageous to have this co-organizer role in case something happens to the organizer. That meeting still can happen. So really important that you can kind of distribute that role across a team of individuals if need be.
Yeah, it's one of those things, like I was mentioned, we have the virtual marathon we put on every year. Speaking of, just shameless plug, it's happening next week as well. But as part of that, our event runs 24 hours a day for 3.5 days roughly. So pretty close to 60 hours of content nonstop. I don't know about you, but I need some sleep in that 60-hour time frame. When we've done events previously, it was we had to leave a machine up that the organizer, like I was organizing the actual creating the rooms and everything. So had to leave the machine up in case something came up and somebody needed to go make an adjustment, adjust a setting on it. This allows the abilities, okay, we can share the load, spread it out. Also think like an executive assistant can now go in and adjust things without having to worry about the CEO going in and say, hey, well, how do I clear out the lobby? Oh, okay. We can have somebody else go do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you
So-
see Carrie's question about that, asking
Yeah, that's what
about
I'm trying to see.
the
So what's missing
almost
for the question?
all question mark?
That is a good question. So pretty much, if I remember correctly, the co-organizer can pretty much do everything except delete, because they're the one. That's the main person, the main organizer's role. But other than that, they can come in, they can adjust the attendees, they can adjust the settings, they can, I think, even reschedule if need be. But it does give you most of the ability. Go ahead, Don.
Actually, I'm trying to remember, but I thought it was more during the meeting itself and not prior to the meeting.
Because from what I've seen, I think there was before like the options, but I could be wrong.
Yeah,
I've not
I
seen
think
it
it's
in my
still in
tenant yet,
flux.
so I can't say.
Yeah.
How many co-organizers can you have for an event? Ooh,
Oh, that's a
I
great
don't know.
question.
Yeah, it is. I don't know that I've
I
seen
don't
a
think we have
published
any
limit.
documentation on that.
Yeah, so I haven't seen anything published yet on
Yep.
what the limit for that would be. So just because there was the question. Put the link. Oh, I am not typing well today.
And you can imagine that this is really welcome for some of my clients right now. We have scenarios where we'll do hybrid events, and maybe there's a specific group in charge of the location where the event will occur, and they'll work with corporate communications to distribute the invitation to the event. But then we like to have co-organizers working both in IT as well as marketing or corporate communications that are able to address meeting options and things of that nature. So we're really looking forward to this feature coming out soon. All right, moving on to the next one. Q&A for Teams meetings.
Yes.
So yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, I think that's yeah, that's me. So yeah, so as far as the Q&A, it's one of those pieces of functionality that we have for doing a live event. So if you have a live event, there is an option to be able to do moderated Q&A. If you're in a meeting, not so much. The only option you got really is chat and polls. So to be able to make sure that, okay, I want to do just like you could do you would expect in a webinar or a live event. I want to allow people to ask questions, and then we can decide, do we want to answer them on screen, or do we want to answer those just more through chat? So it is kind of cool. It is out in public preview. I think if you are the organizer on a meeting, you can add it to any meeting now. It is, since it is out in public preview. I've looked, and apparently, since I am not in the tenant, I don't have permission to be able to add it to this meeting. Otherwise, we could experiment with it. And since it's the last one of the day, I wouldn't feel bad, but I don't have that option right now, so we'll just have to deal with that. But yeah, it is kind of cool. So that way you can ask they can ask questions, you can stage them, and you can respond to those messages.
Yeah, and for those of you that might not be familiar with live events, it is a curated Q&A experience, right? So what I mean by that is your questions can be submitted by attendees and then reviewed and published by organizers. And so that's, you can publish a question and then respond to that like as an answer. So you have a little more control over what everyone consumes in terms of the questions asked by all attendees. So you can imagine if you had a meeting where you have tens or hundreds of attendees, this is a great feature to be able to have them submit questions, and then you determine, because of time constraints or various other factors, which questions you're going to make available to everyone in the meeting. All right. Thank you, Don, for responding to Naomi there. I appreciate that. So yes,
no problem.
Naomi, with the co-organizer capability, definitely plan ahead, right? As soon as this is available, make sure you have enough organizers so that both your enough co-organizers so that both your organizer and your co-organizers are covered. Right. So it's the backup of the backup, I guess, is what maybe you were referring to. All right, next feature is detect music automatically. I put this one in here because this one is very near and dear to my household. And as a consultant, I travel. I work in airports or in coffee shops, and so it's super important for Teams with its noise cancellation capabilities to understand that there is some music in the background, and then give me an option to suppress that music out of my meeting, right? Super helpful for me and for the other attendees of that meeting. But in my house, especially during COVID, while we were all working from home, my son was also taking music lessons from home, right? And you know, what's really cool about this feature is that Teams detects the music, but then says, hey, do you want me to suppress that music? In the case of a private music lesson, definitely not, right? So this is a really cool feature. And I've kind of been waiting to see this come up. I've been traveling all week, haven't seen it. But what was really funny about Ryan and I getting prepared this morning for this session is that it came up in a meeting that we were having. So it's pretty cool to see that it came up. Now, Ryan was not really playing music. He wasn't singing to me. So, you know, we'll see how this all manifests over as it's rolled out. But it was our first experience with it in the real world.
Yeah, we saw. I kid you not. I was sitting there talking with Galen, and all says, "Hey, we're detecting background music." I'm like, okay, unless Teams is hearing something I'm not, or my voice is too sing-songy for what their algorithm. I don't know, but at least we know the feature's out there now. So
yeah,
definitely something you should be starting to see in your attendance now. Like we had it listed, it's supposed to come out in April. Well, here we are, and so we've already started to see it roll out. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, very cool. All right.
All right, so Rtmp streaming. So this is one of those cool things that you can take advantage of to increase your audience. So if you've dealt with Teams meetings, you've dealt with webinars, you've dealt with live events, there is a limit, and we'll get to that question in a second. So there is a limit on how many people can attend. So right now, with most of them, you got there's like with a live event, you got a 20,000 person limit. So not many organizations are going to hit that big, but there are some. So the beauty of what this allows you to do is it's just like the Q&A for Teams. It's just an app that you add into the meeting that allows you to be able to say, hey, I want to also stream this meeting, this webinar, what have you, directly out to an Rtmp endpoint, which for those that aren't familiar, Rtmp is the standard streaming protocol for most anybody that's doing live streaming. So for example, if somebody's doing a live stream to YouTube, live stream to Twitch, live stream to Facebook or LinkedIn, it's all using Rtmp. So what you can do is you can now say, hey, I want to take this meeting. I'm going to also broadcast it to Microsoft Stream, YouTube, whatever. And then that way you can increase your audience and you can have as many people as you need to now consuming it. The other cool thing about this is that Rtmp stream is not coming from your machine. That stream is coming from Microsoft servers. So you've got their bandwidth feeding it directly out and you don't have to worry about it. So kind of a cool thing is pretty much once you add it to your meeting, it's 2 questions. What's the Rtmp URL and what's the stream key? Standard things for a Rtmp stream. And then you have an option to hit, hey, go ahead and start streaming, and you're off and running. So Microsoft has said they're going to be making improvements to it, just kind of make sure give you the more control over what it gets. Because right now, it just kind of gives you the basic canvas of who's the active speaker and what content's being shared, and that's it. So there are more things going to be coming to it, but it works for now. We do have the question from Danielle. Can you pick up, or Daniel, I have a hard time with that, Daniel. Can you pick automatically detect and reject certain types of music? Probably not. I know it's probably going to end up in the settings where you can say, hey, yeah, this particular meeting, there's not going to be any music. I don't care. Don't even bother detecting it. But yeah, certain types of music, it would be kind of nice just to be able to say flat out, okay, if you hear elevator music, I'm in the coffee shop, cut it out. Maybe a feature request we could have from Microsoft is, hey, based off of location, am I in a Starbucks? Yes. Okay. Automatically turn that feature on, then we can go the other way. I don't know. But at this point in time, yeah, we don't have a whole lot other than it just picks what it assumes and sounds like the sounds that come through as music, and it says, hey, this is sounding like music. Do you want do you want us to keep turning this out, or do you want to let it through?
Yeah, I like the location block idea as well, right? If you have location services on, super cool to do that. All right, so that is the majority of all of the features. Like Ryan said at the onset, our goal as we talked about these features was really to kind of focus on, what's just released, that's still providing a lot of capabilities. And we started with PowerPoint Present in Teams. Although that came out last year, we find that people still are not using that often, that they're still sharing a screen. And we want to make sure that we, highlight some of those capabilities around decreasing the network utilization by using PowerPoint in Teams, all the way through this Rtmp streaming capability, which is fairly new, and highlighting some of the things that we're really looking forward to that haven't yet dropped with a virtual green room and co-organizers. Excuse me. So there's a lot of other features, though, that will help us as we look to have meetings level up and power up those meetings, webinars, and events. So please visit Microsoft's roadmap. There's plenty of things on there. Hopefully, these things will drop soon for all of us. And like I said, when you see the deck in the notes, there's the feature ID for each of these that you can use to look up on the roadmap.
Yeah, and a lot of the ones, like the ones that we have already, we didn't put the feature IDs in because they're already released. There are some of the, like I said, the variations, the breakout room changes. They have an alternate feature ID for GCC and government clouds and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, so like any of the ones we say, hey, are coming soon, we try to make sure, hey, we've got the feature ID in there so you can go check the status on it, because that's going to be the source of truth. There's the detect music. We talked about it. We did a session in January, and it was supposed to be February at that point in time.
Yeah.
And then we're preparing for another one, and it had shifted. So it's one of those things that, okay, yeah, it's cool. The feature IDs are where you're going to be your source of truth, and the roadmap to say, okay, hey, where are we at? Because a lot of times they'll estimate, say, hey, this is where it's going to be coming out. On the roadmap, you can see, hey, this is rolling out now. So you know, okay, cool. So sometime within the next couple of weeks, I'll have it in my tenant.
Yeah, and you don't want to get caught off guard sometimes if you have those folks maybe in your corporate communications or marketing departments or trainers in an HR department that might schedule some of these type of events, right? So this will help you stay in front of them finding these features for you. All right, so again, that's everything out of the box. And now what we want to do is start talking about how you power up all of this, right? And we are going to talk about OBS, and we're going to talk about some of the things that we do with Teams in OBS, as an example, to provide that virtual green room. But before we go into those cool features and some of how we use it, let's just give everyone a foundation of what OBS is, an overview of what it is. OBS stands for Open Broadcaster Software. Like I said, it's free. It's open source, and it's designed for hey, I just, want to play around and, do some cool stuff. I want to stream, myself playing, my favorite video game. So if you go to Twitch as an example, you're going to see a large number of people using OBS to stream there. And professional organizations use this as well. So it can be used to record video, to live stream using multiple video sources, custom effects. There is a user community just as large as the one that we're all members of, coming to the workshop day, that has a ton of capabilities that they share with everyone. So as we go through this overview, we want to start, like I said, at the foundational level, talking about the OBS components that you need to know and understand to be successful when using it. Once you understand these components and how they go together and how they kind of build on top of each other, then we'll start talking about how we've leveraged those to do some pretty cool things. But know that as long as you have that foundation, then you can experiment with OBS to achieve some really cool things that power up your meetings and webinars and live events. All right, so let's go ahead and jump right into OBS Scenes.
Sweet. So yeah, so scenes are going to be the main basis of what you're going to be interacting with a lot, because that controls the scene is essentially a grouping of what you want displayed. And you can say, and you can group it and control which ones are displayed at certain points in time. So with that, you can also think, if you're a developer, object-oriented, we've got inheritance, you can also nest scenes within other scenes. So for example, if you want to have a scene that is just your background, and you want certain sources in that background, so you could have, okay, you got the background, you got a logo, you have an image company logo, you have different pieces, and you want that to be the same across all of your scenes, you can put that in a background scene and then include that in your other scenes. And then if you change it in one location, it changes it everywhere. So you don't have to like, okay, now I got to update this one, I got to go update this one, I got to update this one. And just makes it a lot easier to be able to do management and get reuse out of it. Also, your scenes within OBS, they're stored in what they call a scene collection. So that way, if you're working on it, you can have a scene collection that is your scene collection for your company town hall meeting. You can have a scene collection that, as Galen mentioned, is you playing your favorite video game and streaming it out to YouTube or Twitch. You can have a scene collection that is a Teams meeting that's a little more intimate. So you will have some different things laid out. You have a different collection of content that you want to display. That allows you to be able to group it, and that way you're not having to deal with all the clutter of everything else that you're not taking advantage of in that particular meeting type. Also, when you're working with that, your collection can be exported and then imported. So a lot of times when Gail and I are working together on prepping for an event, we try and make sure, hey, store them in a similar location, store the assets in a similar location, so that way when it's exported and re-imported, everything just comes right on in, everybody's happy. Because otherwise it does store, the scenes when they export it are storing a full path. So if I'm storing something underneath my personal folder in my synced OneDrive, it's going to have a completely different path than if Galen puts it in his. So if there is a lot of those options. So this kind of, if you do follow those concepts, it simplifies that process.
Yeah, so if you're using file servers, think UNC paths. If you're using map drives, think similar map drives. Just keep that in mind, because we were just talking about organizers, co-organizers, planning for things that may happen. As we've talked about, we're running an event next week. We're thinking about all of the assets pertaining to that event and where they're located, and making sure that Ryan and I's paths to get to those assets are similar, because if I need to cover for Ryan for whatever reason, the last thing that I need to think about is, oh, it's the path that's wrong. That's what it is, right? So we kind of take care of that in advance. All right, next up is sources.
Yeah, so the sources are, in reality, it's just the content that you want to show. So anything you want people to see or hear, that is what the sources are. So we can see we got a screenshot on the right here of all the different sources that we can go ahead and add to a scene. So we have options for a video capture. So you can think webcam, capture card, what have you. You can throw in a browser. So say, for example, you have a web page that you want to show that has a weather countdown or something going on. You can embed that as part of it. So I think you can do a lot of really cool things, especially with the browser, because it just loads browser. So anything you can load onto a web page, you can now include as part of your scene in OBS. And then, for example, we also have display capture, which captures your screen. You can take advantage and say, hey, I want to capture the screen, and I can stream it out. Images, media source. Media source is going to be like a video or an audio file. Like I said, you can also do a scene. The other one we got here is NDI. So NDI is actually pretty cool. We'll talk about this in a little bit. It's a way of being able to take content from one source and put it out into another to be able for consumption. Even in Teams itself can output an NDI stream that my machine can now pick up and be able to consume inside OBS. Also, there's a plugin for OBS that allows you to go the other way. Say, hey, what I'm outputting through OBS, I also want to be able to output it through NDI, so that can be picked up on professional monitoring systems or what have you. So it definitely does a lot of cool things. Then one at the bottom there, you've got the ability to be able to do a group. So you can group sources together as well.
So I guess, as I read this list, right, and I remember I said we want to create a foundation that you can build on. So know that, as we talk about these components, we've just talked about scenes. So one scene is going to have one or more sources, right? And one of those sources might be another scene. So keep that in mind as we move forward here. And from a foundation perspective, as you get started with OBS, if you haven't already started, understanding these sources and how to configure them and which one you might use, a window capture or a video capture or a display capture, right? Knowing how each one is used, how to configure it, and when to use it, you'll pick that up with some experience. But I guess just to map back, one scene will have many sources. So that being said, we'll move on to outputs.
Yeah, so outputs are your way of being able to get what you're sharing so people can consume it, so people can see it. So like we had mentioned before, Rtmp, one of the main ways to be able to do streams, allows you to be able to stream into YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, or even a Microsoft Stream live event. You can output that content out. Also, you have the option to record to a disk, which I would recommend is a good thing to do, even if you are live streaming, because you never know if something's going to go weird with that live stream provider. You never know if you're trying to stream something to Teams and all of a sudden, there was a glitch and now you have a bad recording. So be able to have a recorded to disk copy of it, make sure you have a full high fidelity copy that you can come out to later. Also, there's the ability to output to a screen. So if I want to, and we'll show this here in a minute, I can take what I'm outputting it, send it out to a screen, and now that screen can now be an input to sharing my desktop from Teams. So it allows us to be able to include that content in. There's also one of the ones I don't have listed on here is there is a virtual camera option that's enabled built into OBS. There's also the NDI plugin, like I said, that does have the ability to output it. There is a plugin, there's a virtual webcam for NDI, which allows you to be able to say, hey, take that content and just connect it all in. So a lot of really good stuff. There are places where each one of these are better than others, and we'll talk about a little later on when is the best time to apply each one of those and to put them into play, because some situations merit different choices depending on what you're trying to accomplish and what your goals are.
Yeah. And I think at that time, it'll be great to talk about, when we use some of these, like, are we running one of our user group meetings? Is that user group meeting in person only? Is it hybrid, or is it all virtual, right? Things like that. So we'll keep that in mind. And if you have any of those scenarios that you want to ask about, maybe something that's good for your local community, maybe your church or something like that, or professionally, in the workplace. If you have any of those scenarios, start thinking about those. We'd love to help you during this session answer some of those questions. It's some great way for us all to contribute to the conversation, and typically that helps the larger group as well. All right, so we've been talking about these different components, and it's all great to talk about, but I think it's even better to start to see it, which is like the coolest thing about being able to join you today for workshop days. So that being said, Ryan's going to go ahead and take over, and we're going to start to demo OBS.
Yeah, so here we go. We've got OBS. So this is fairly standard, fairly basic mode. If you start up OBS the first time, you'll notice, okay, you've got a scene and then no sources. So I can come in, I can add as many scenes as I want. I can say, hey, we'll do a starting soon scene. And a lot of times if you're doing a stream, you may need to say, hey, you know what, we'll do a BRB. So we can set up a bunch of these different things. And as I mentioned before, we can also do background. So we have all this different stuff. So I can come into my first scene here and I say, I want to add in a source. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to add in a scene as my first source. I'm just going to say, I want background. So now within here, granted, I have nothing in the scene, but I can see that it is here. So if I come back to my background scene, I can add in different resources. So for example, I can throw an image on here. Browse out, go snag an image. Let's see if we can pull up these guys here. So now I can see my images here. You'll notice this is a very high fidelity image. So it's huge and it's expanding clear off of the screen. So I do have the option. I can come in and say, you know what, I can just right click and I can transform and I want to fit the screen. Sweet, cool. Now we got the logo here. If I come back to my scene, I'm back in scene and now it's there. I can also say, you know what, I want to do this scene just as part of it, or I'm going to go ahead and hit Alt here. And I'm going to cut this down a little bit. I'm bringing in and cropping out the edges. So now, even though the main scene itself, the main background is that, in my scene, I'm just kind of trimming out to make sure this is just the content of that I want to focus on. So you can think, for example, in some of these modern days, we've got these cameras that have a wide view lens. You may not need the entire width. You just want more of, okay, I just want the person. I want the talking head. So this makes it really cool to be able to take advantage of doing that. Some other things we can do, for example, I'm going to come into here. I'm going to throw on, let's see, where's my video capture device. I'm going to call this one webcam. And so I can pick the different cameras. So for this particular camera, there it goes. There we go. Now we're activated. So this is a different view. This is another application I've got that helps me able to kind of do the background removal before Teams got it. Plus, I can also, as you can see, it looks like I'm kind of lounging in a nice little hut in Bora Bora or something. I wish. But we have all this information. And like I said, it looks like it's big. It's a huge view. So I can also, same thing with this guy, I can bring it down and I can cut. And now I'm just here. So I can put myself over here on the side. So if you're thinking, a lot of times, if you're doing a live event, you're doing streaming, a lot of times you get the situation of picture in picture. So I can come in, I've got me now. I want to throw in another capture device. I have a capture card connected to my machine. So I'm going to do this as capture. So this could be pulling in from, if somebody's sharing their screen, you have somebody that's you're playing a video game, as Galen mentioned, you can pull in that content. So I have this connected to my Chromecast. So I go select the right device here. And so now I have the option here. So we've got all this stuff. Now you can see a little bit here, maybe a bit of a problem. If I'm going for the whole picture-in-picture mode, My picture is getting a little chopped off here. I don't want to have to sit here like, okay, I'm over here now. As you see things within OBS, that is the order that they're going to be. So that's the priority. Whatever's on top is on top. So if I want me to be on top, I can just click my webcam, drag it to the top, and voila. Now I'm ready to roll. So we have all this functionality. Like I said, we can come in and now I'm going to throw in, since say, hey, we're starting soon. I'm going to do, where's my text? Yeah. I'm just going to throw a fairly basic message on here. Starting, if I can get the right capitalization of the T. Okay, go ahead and select a color. We'll go with red. Pretty cool. So now once we get things configured, so we can see we've got a bunch of different scenes. We can do set up another one for our Be Right Back, what have you. There are also built-in plugins that you can do countdown timers. Say, hey, count down from 5 minutes. That way people can kind of get their information. A lot of times for an event, it's good to have something visual, something moving, so people know, hey, is this still happening? And also if you can, some elevator music, some background music, something to be able to say, hey, okay, is my audio working? Yeah, okay, good. I can hear it. Because I kid you not, in every meeting I'm at, this is the first question that everybody asks. Like, oh, are we going? Oh, can I hear anything? Is there any sound? People just out of habit, they want to make sure, okay, they're ready to participate. And if we have those, it just alleviates those questions and it provides a better experience for people. So
And
once
note
we have,
that your music doesn't have to be, Ryan talked about a 5-minute countdown. It doesn't have to be 5 minutes, right? It could be a 1 minute and 32-second long audio clip that you set on a loop. That capability exists within OBS.
Yeah, so we have the question. So OBS works in PC or both PC and Mac. And yes, it works since it's open source, it does work on PC, it does work on Mac. There are variations as well. You can get that run on Linux. So it's definitely runs across platform. And that's one of the beauties of it is, since it is open source, there's people that provide stuff with it. With that, along those lines, it is, as you can see, it's not very fancy looking, but with what it lacks in fancy, it does enable a lot of power. So we can do a lot of really cool things, but there's might be a bit of a learning curve on how to implement them. So for example, once we're ready, we have everything good to go, I can come in here and I can check my output settings. So for example, we do have the option for streaming. Cool. We also have the recording, where it's going to record that video file. So if you happen to hit the start recording button, where is it going to put it and what format is it going to put it in? Definitely very helpful information. So also if we come into stream, this is the same place where you can put out your RTMP information. Just like we talked about in Teams, you have two pieces of information. You have your stream URL, which they call the server, and your stream key. As long as you've set those in there, then you'll be ready to go. Also, if we come out for our video, you can control what your resolution is. So a lot of times you want to make sure your resolution that you're outputting to, because this will also adjust your canvas size if you change it, you want that to be fairly close to what you're outputting to. And the reason is if you have it too far off, your computer has to work harder to scale everything down. And you want to try and minimize it, because sometimes you're doing a lot of things, you don't want to be stuck trying to minimize those activities. So you definitely want to make sure you're getting it as close to what you're going to be broadcasting it in as possible. Like I mentioned, besides that, we do have the options. All of your output options are here. So we have the option to start streaming. We can start recording, and we can start the virtual camera. So for example, if I hit start virtual camera, I can come over here in Teams, and I can change my camera. Instead of this one that's in front of me, I have an option for OBS virtual camera. So now my face is now going to be replaced with my background image. Make sure you turn off the background effects before you try and take advantage of this. All right, turn that off. Apply. Okay, so now we can see it says starting soon. So as I switch, now my picture that you're looking at is really what's getting output from OBS. So it does allow you to, this is one of the ways you can kind of get your content into a Teams meeting without a whole lot of extra effort. I can set up some fancy stuff, do my picture in picture. I even have in this tool that does the background, I even have a background that is a green screen. So that way I can automatically crop out and just do the head and shoulders. Granted, not the best idea wearing a green shirt if you're trying to do that, because then you're just a floating head. which can kind of freak some people out. So definitely some cool stuff there. One of the things I enjoy doing, the way I prefer to do these, I'll go ahead and switch my camera back quick just before I forget to do it, because there's time frames I've done this before and it says, oh, yeah, I'm sharing the wrong screen. Device settings. Okay, cool. So as part of this as well, we do have the option. I can say I want to output everything over. My preferred approach when I'm working with these events, because I like to be able to make sure I know what's coming up and get it ready. By default in OBS, you get this view. You can switch to studio mode. And what studio mode allows you to do is prep. So for example, right now, both sides are showing the same scene. If you've been in a live event, they have the same concept. You have your actual live content and you have your stage. So we have our program is what's actually being output right now to the, I should turn off the virtual camera, but you out to whatever your output method is. And then I can also come over here and I can say, get ready or starting soon. I want to go ahead and transition this, stick it up. So now the program everybody's seeing starting soon. Well, I can come in and I can make changes without everybody else seeing it.
And just like live events, Ryan clicked on, transition to send what he was staging over in the preview to the program, to send it live. If you're familiar with live events, right? Send live. But notice in OBS, there's some transitions, different styles of transition that may take longer. You can increase the amount of time it takes for that transition to occur. So you have a little more enhanced capability to control that transition. And what's really cool is you can even manually control the transition. Yeah. So a couple of additional features that make this a little more powered up than what you would get out of live events out of the box.
Yeah, so we mentioned or talked about the concept we call double teams. I'm going to go ahead and create a scene that is just that. So with that, I'm going to go into my meeting here, and hopefully, cross my fingers, this is going to cooperate with me. I'm going to turn on NDI broadcast. Okay, so I've gone into Teams, I've turned it on. Yep, it still says on, cool. So now nobody really sees anything within Teams. But Teams, since this is built-in functionality, as soon as I start consuming that NDI feed, everybody here in this meeting will see a little pop-up that says, hey, this is being broadcast. Microsoft's awareness of sensitivity and all those sort of things. So definitely a cool feature. So I can come in here and I can select an NDI source. So I'm going to say this one is Galen. So I can pick my source. So I can see we've got active speaker. I got, oh, yep, there's Galen.
Then can you show that once again, Ryan? I think everyone, it's you can all see each other's names in chat, so we're not, you could reference this, right? This is everybody that's currently in the meeting and their video feed.
Yeah, and if the video feed's not on, Teams just displays an animated Teams style logo. So if you're dealing with that, one of the things a lot of times if I'm dealing with NDI, I'll actually split the NDI feeds out into their own source. So I'd create a scene for Galen, a scene for me, anybody I wanted to include, because there is some scaling that can go on based off of the available bandwidth. So I'm going to say, hey, let's go ahead and allow hardware acceleration, latency mode. I want low latency, and I'm dealing with my own machine here, so shouldn't be a problem. So I can go ahead and select it. Oh, and now you can see we got the notice popped up in Teams. Hey, broadcasting capabilities is turned on, and here we've got Galen over here on the side. So I'm going to say, hey, we're going to do a panel here with Galen and myself. So I'm going to go ahead and add in another NDI feed. Call this me. So I come in, I can select wherever I am. One thing you'll notice though, oh, I'm not here. So as part of the way Teams sets up its NDI, if you're doing it from the machine and you're actually the participant that wanting to talk, they have a different approach. They call it the local speaker. I'm not seeing it on here. There is active speaker, which are kind of automatically adjusts. I'm going to snag you, Dawn. You came on camera here. You get to be the guinea pig. So we'll throw Dawn on here.
That's why I did
There
it.
we go. Okay, so now we can also take advantage of, if I want to throw another one on here, I am currently sharing my screen. So we'll have a little bit of inception going on here. But I can say, hey, this is going to be. Also, as part of this, let's see if it works this time. I had time frames where it's kind of finicky. Is it the remote connection one? Let's see if it adds. No, not that one. So sometimes I've had mixed luck with whether coming from my own machine. Oh, nope, that's a different one. That is something coming from actual NDI itself. Yeah, it's not going to cooperate with me. But also, if you're consuming, so you're just a participant, not sharing the content, there is also an option that which is the actual shared desktop. Since in Teams meetings you get one anyway, it'll just be another one of the sources that's in your meeting. So as I was saying, the beauty of this is, and this is one of those features that Microsoft released recently, is each one of these sources has their own audio feed. So for example, if I now transition this over to live, we can watch the audio bar down here. And if everything works the way Microsoft says it's supposed to, if Galen says something, we should be able to see his little bar go green.
Yeah, and what's really cool about using this feature is imagine those scenarios where you want to have a panel, right? And you want to even maybe brand that panel. So you can really dial in your background screens and then layer things up to create that entire experience that is pertinent for your organization and that particular event.
Yeah, and like I said, the beauty of this is you can now create your own green screen, your own green room. So for example, if I switch this back, now Galen and Dawn's audio is not showing up in the audio mixer, nor are their cameras. So they can sit in that meeting that they're sitting in beside the other meeting that we're in. They can sit and they can converse, chat, say, hey, we're getting ready. And then I can give them a message, hey, we're getting ready to start. And then once we get going, now they can transition over. If I want, I can say, hey, you know what? I know Galen's got some background noise. He's got the construction crew that's making noise in his area. I know we've gone through our rehearsals. I know when things are going to happen. So I'm just going to go in, I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to mute Galen for now. So that way, as far as the meeting is concerned, and through the content OBS, there's nothing getting fed out. Granted, in this meeting, Galen can still talk, and Dawn could hear him, but none of the actual people that are consuming the output of OBS could. So it kind of gives you a lot of ability. You can kind of control the audio channels and even the video, say, hey, this is what I want to be able to show now. Because I could have one source that is our double teams. I could have a different source where I want Galen only. And like I said, I can now come in. I can throw another NDI. I'll use an existing one. And so now I have, if I want to say I'm ready to have two speakers, I've got my scene for that. If I'm ready to switch to one, I can do a fade and say, okay, now it's just Galen. So we can do a lot. If you think about newscasts, a lot of the same functionality, what they're doing to make it look really cool. You could even have your own weather channel guide doing the green screen with in the background. All of that's available to us through OBS. You just got the big piece of it is it's got to be creative. The only limit is your imagination.
So we've used this double teams, right? We've used this quite a bit to really guide and create an experience for those that are attendees. Some things you'll want to keep an eye on. Obviously, if you have one meeting with all of your presenters going on over here that they're a part of, and that is being broadcast through another meeting that your attendees are in, what happens with chat? What happens with Q&A, right? Those presenters are in a different meeting. They're not aware of that. So you have to have somebody that can MC that meeting that your attendees are in and bring in chat or questions if you are enabling them back to the presenters. Otherwise, you might have more of a, an output from that initial meeting to the attendees.
Yeah, and one of the last output options we're going to talk about, and then we got to go back get onto, so we're getting got 20 minutes left ish on our time, but one of the options that we really take advantage of, if you need a full screen mode that takes up just like sharing a desktop, I can take Galen's content here or take the program, and I can do a windowed projector. So what I can do, I'm going to say, hey, nope, I don't want sphere. Sorry, I want full screen. So with that, I can say, not that one, I want this top guy here. So now, whatever is in the output, it is just Galen. It is full screen. I'm going to go ahead and snag my OBS window here and bring it over. But like, for example, you guys are seeing Galen. If I now transition, you are now seeing the other screen that we've got prepared. And so this is a way you can kind of get your content out of OBS into Teams. But as far as people are concerned, it portrays it and it relays it just like it was somebody sharing their desktop. All right, then
So
just
the
to get out of this
idea
mode,
here
I just hit escape and we're out.
how can you use OBS maybe without your meeting attendees even being aware, right? How can you do all of these things and just level up that experience while everything still persists in Teams normally?
Yep. All right, let's switch back to slides and we can hit some of the cool things that we've, well, not maybe not, yes, some cool things, but some things we've learned when we're doing a bunch of these events to be able to help people say, okay, here's some gotchas you may run into.
All right, so let me jump over to that slide. So pro tips, best experience. So when you're in a meeting, right? And this is what Ryan was just doing. He was sharing a screen, right? You saw me on the big screen. Sorry about that. But yeah, screen share, great way, preferred way from our perspective to get your OBS output into Teams. Same thing with the Teams webinar. Kind of think of the meeting and the webinar as the same thing as it relates to that.
Yeah, and then like we mentioned, if you're doing a live event through Stream or in Yammer or even Teams with an external encoder, you have the Rtmp is going to get you your full option because you have 100% control over what's displayed. You don't have to deal with any of the Teams layout and the background. You're just controlling all the content that goes out. So that's definitely a higher fidelity. If you have that option, it's going to get you the richer experience. Because a lot of times, some of these other modes, you do have to worry about making sure your audio and your video stay in sync, because that can happen.
Yeah, and keep in mind that if that does happen, again, go into the configuration of OBS. There are some settings in there that will enable you to kind of adjust the latency of your audio. So as you know, as Ryan said, OBS might not be there might not be a significant investment in how the application looks compared to applications you can purchase licenses to that do the same thing. But there are a lot of different configurations that you can apply, and so they're all in those setting screens. You got to hunt them down.
And along those lines, one of the things I was going to say, I was thinking about the virtual camera by default is going to be your best option. I know it's one of those things like we're talking about, okay, yeah, Rtmp gets you the best if it's an option. Aside from that, if you can get a virtual camera into a full like Teams live event, that's going to get you your best resolution. You're going to get your full 720p 30 frames per second. Whereas if you're in just like a screen share, Microsoft has adjusted the bit rates on that just because it's usually a shared desktop. It's a PowerPoint slide that's not changing all that often.
All right. So pro tips. As we walked through all of OBS and you have your different sources and then your scenes, and then you layer onto that one or more Teams meetings, webinars, or a live event, what's important is to test everything. And when we say test everything, what we mean is all of those configurations, but the actual hardware that you're going to use. test on the same day of the event that you're going to use. And not that day, but in weeks leading up to the event. Same time. I can't tell you how many times we've helped produce events where the person didn't know that their trash man came at that particular time on that day, or their gardening service, or whatever the service provider is that caused the disruption. So there's been plenty of instances like that. You want to test, and then when you think everything's working, then test it again, right?
Yeah, and if you also, as you're going through it, if you're changing things, make sure you go back and retest some of those things again. There's time frames where we've done events where we thought everything was good, and then they throw a wrench out at us at the last minute, like, oh, yeah, wait a minute, we've got a video we want to play here. Like, okay, so we went back and checked it, and yeah, the way they were wanting to do it was not going to work, so we had to last minute do an adjustment to be able to say, okay, we're going to change up how we're doing this video to make sure that the attendees or the people that are watching get the best experience.
And what's really cool when you're testing everything, especially with your presenters, is that as you test it more than once, you really create what they call a run of show. It's basically a time breakdown of who's doing what when. What scene are you going to switch to next, and approximately how many minutes and seconds into your event are you going to transition to that screen? So you can really get that dialed in. As far as Ryan was just giving an example about video, we know that at some minute and second, there's going to be a video that's supposed to play in the presentation that's being presented through Teams, right? And there's scenarios that you want to test to make sure that's going to happen. All right. Next thing.
So might be mindful of bandwidth. One of the things we mentioned, a beauty of present in Teams is it's less bandwidth. A lot of times when you're dealing with things, you have to be aware of what you're doing. Within your Teams, you can look and see there's an option under your little ... menu there. There's an option there for call health. If you've never looked at it, I definitely recommend looking at it. It tells you what sort of bandwidth you are consuming on your network to send up your video. So for me, I can go ahead and look at it. My video bit rate is at 1.82 megabits per second. My audio, for some odd reason, is not showing me my sent bit rate. Interesting. But you can also kind of look and see, okay, what is going on? So you'll have a good idea of what your demand and your load on your network is going to be. So there's the piece of bandwidth that you are consuming producing the event, but also be mindful of those that are watching and consuming that content. If you have 5,000 people all on campus and you have them watching from their desks individually, that's going to be 5,000 people going out to the internet, pulling down a stream that if your network is not configured properly, that can cause some problems. I've worked with clients where they're trying to get going with live events even, and they overloaded their firewall, which shut down their internet for the entire company. Not a good situation. So definitely make sure you're aware of that and work with the network team, if there is one, to say, hey, this is what we're going to be doing. This is roughly what we're going to see as far as bandwidth. And just run it by them. Hey, is this going to cause you any concerns? Is this going to be any problems? And then work together for a solution to be able to get through it.
Yep. I oftentimes will work with the network team and they'll QoS traffic for the presenters in the meeting where they have locations that are network constrained. So definitely, work with them in advance, because I found that oftentimes where there is a constraint, they can overcome it with some QoS rules. Like I said, run of show, kind of hit on that with the test everything, right? You're going to create that run of show through your testing effort, and that will help give everyone an idea of what to expect when. And this is something that we do all the time. Just last month, we were producing an event. 2 days prior to the event, one of the MC of the event was diagnosed with COVID. Well, guess what? All the roles on that event pivoted, right? So we had backups. We had a plan in place because of our tests. So our run of show and all the testing that we did enabled us to transition the roles in the event and still have a successful event.
I mean, even as part of like this presentation, Galen and I have a run of show that we go off of saying, hey, here's who's talking about which content. So that way we know it flows and say, okay, yep, this one's mine, this one's yours. So it's not a, okay, I'm stepping over Galen. So we know what's going on. Along those lines, moving on to audio sync, especially if you're dealing with pulling content out and then trying to resend it back in, there are possibilities of your audio and video getting out of sync. So definitely as part of your test, make sure that's one of those things you're watching for. It's some things that people are very sensitive about. My wife is one of those. While she's watching a show, if there's something where it gets the audio and the videos out of sync, she has to stop watching. She can listen, but she can't watch anymore because it just irritates her so much to see somebody's lips moving, but the audio is not matching it. So it just drives her nuts. So like we've said before, there are settings in OBS where you can adjust that to say, hey, we want to add a little bit of a delay just to kind of bring them back in sync again.
All right, we talked about a green room. Here we're talking about a green screen. Definitely if you have green screen, especially for those events, like I'm thinking about, those state of the firm kind of events. Anytime you're going to have your executive teams, especially if they're all remote, but you want to bring them together on a panel, you potentially could bring them together and your attendees wouldn't even know that they were in remote locations separated from each other. So you can do a lot with a green screen. We've worked with a lot of organizations that will create a kit and then send that kit to the folks that they're going to bring in. So that kit might include a combination of a green screen and lights and mics and those kind of things to help level up that environment in which that participant is located.
And along those lines, lighting. Lighting is an important factor when you're dealing with content because depending on the different camera that you're dealing with, some deal better with low light situations than others. I've noticed even as time has shifted across this session, my own lighting has adjusted just because I have most of my main light source for this particular setup is coming through a window. So make sure you're aware of lighting. And if you're dealing with a green screen, it becomes even more important. If you want to be able to have a crisp, clear delineation of where they are and what's the background, even in Teams, if you have good light in front and good light behind, Teams can adjust and say, okay, yep, this is where you are. Same thing with a green screen. I can trim it out, make it nice and crisp, but you have to have those light sources to be able to differentiate between them. Even more so with a green screen. If your green screen has shadows, that is now, as far as the tools are concerned, that's a different shade of green that it may or may not be replacing properly or trimming out properly. So it can cause you some headaches. So lighting is going to be critical to making sure you have a nice, crisp, clear experience and also making sure that their whole face isn't just washed out. We were in a meeting the other day where one of the other people in the meeting, they just looked like eyes and lips because there's had so much light on their face that it's just the camera was getting washed out.
All right, we know we're running out of time here, so we'll move fast. The sound, quality sound, good sound trumps bad video all day, every day. Ryan's example of his wife not being able to continue to participate in anything where the audio is out of sync. It's the same if if my audio is cutting in and out throughout the entire session. You'd probably drop or ask Ryan to mute me. It's sound is critical. It's definitely more important than video. So if you have network constraints, think about that, right? It's better to hear than it is to see in most cases. So you'll want to adjust appropriately. All right, we have some additional pro tips.
Yeah, we got one left. Yeah, so this is one that even as part of this session right now can be a problem. So the problem is when you are taking advantage of spotlighting. So if you're doing one of those methods like we talked about, where you're feeding your information in from OBS or from what have you into Teams through a virtual camera, If you're just in a meeting where everybody's just consuming only, you can spotlight that one person. They take up the whole screen. It's all good, except for the recording. So if we look at it, like on the screenshot we have on the right, granted, this is just my profile picture in here. This is what we are outputting through OBS. So we had the slides, we had 2 cameras, but you can see it's kind of chopped off. And then we had an attendee that was on. This is what the recording looked like. So, right, oh, great. So this is one of the situations where we also reverted back to the recording that came out of OBS to make sure we had the full fidelity. But like right now, Galen and I were spotlighted, but as far as Teams is concerned, it's not going to be a whole lot of difference there. Because basically in Teams, if you spotlight, it just treats it like another video source. So even if my camera wasn't on, you just have a profile picture or just the circle with your initials in it. And if in the recording, this is not super helpful because we have content chopped off on the left, we can't even see the speakers. So if you're going to be doing this, be aware that this is a possible problem. So make sure you have an alternate mechanism for being able to redistribute that recording out instead of the native Teams recording.
All
Yeah,
right.
and we covered that.
There we go. In writing. All right. So as we conclude, does anyone have any additional questions? I see some good comments. Same color lights too. Yeah, definitely. Any other questions?
Go ahead, raise your hand, come off mute.
All right. Well, we want to thank you for participating in our session today. We want to thank Don for coming off a camera and helping us out with that demo.
No problem.
If you have any questions that you think of down the road, please feel free to engage Ryan and I. This is something that we're very passionate about. We love playing around. If there's some scenario that you have and you know, we'd be more than happy to like test it in our own environment because it just gives us more reasons to play with the software and do these things we love.
We're just little kids, and when you like playing with something, you like playing with it. So give us an excuse to play with some other cool scenarios.
All right.
All
And
right.
we want to thank John and the rest of the Minnesota user group for workshop day today. This is awesome. A lot of fun to be a part of.
And we appreciate you guys being able to come and present a great topic. Thank you.
Sorry, now, Don, the question is, did you learn something new?
I think maybe 1 or 2 things.
I know that's what you're saying. You wanted to see if you learned something. So
Oh, yeah.
if we got somebody learned something new, I count that as a success.
I would agree with that. All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. All right. Everybody else, I'm going to stop the recording.